Okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the April 28th, 2021 meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Irvin?
Present.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Present.
Commissioner Lewin?
Present.
Commissioner Roberts?
Present.
Commissioner Song?
Present.
Vice Chair Maruzzi?
Here.
Chair Wormick?
Present.
7 members present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Yes, Madam Chair and Planning Commissioners, the agenda was published on Thursday, April 22nd, and our meeting has been published in accordance with state law.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to go into public comments. Time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on consent calendar and other agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Please note that the Planning Commission is prohibited from taking action on any items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes is allowed for each speaker. Testimony for public hearings may be offered at this time or at the time of the hearing. Members of the public who would like to comment on items 2A, 2B, and 2C are directed to comment under this portion of the agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment?
My name is Frank Pepler. I would like to comment.
Please go ahead.
I'm logged in as my wife, Janine Glued, but it's because she had the Zoom last. I wrote a letter on April 15th asking the Planning Commission to consider adoption of a standalone ordinance that addresses the construction of pickleball courts as opposed to tennis courts. And in that letter, I think I laid out a fairly persuasive case that the existing tennis court ordinance is insufficient to address the significant increase in noise associated with pickleball play. I also suggested that the standalone ordinance address conversion of existing tennis courts to pickleball use. My interest in this came up because there was a project that Mr. Lyon is familiar with that was proposed for a court just adjacent to my home. That request for construction of a pickleball court has been withdrawn, and presumably that project will move forward. But I think that the points that I raise should be addressed in a study of this issue. And I specifically am concerned that my to-be neighbors may change their mind in the future and come back and apply the tennis court ordinance, which I think will have an insignificant review by the Planning Commission and the Architectural Advisory Committee to really address the proper concerns. So I wanted to address the commission so that I could see if there's anything I could do to tee this up as a standalone item or a study commission item to really get some traction behind this before the commission needs to address applications for construction of these courts.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Sure.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to address us? There being none, public testimony is closed. We'll move on to other business. The first item.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
before we get into that, we skipped over acceptance of the agenda, so we can return back to that.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda? Commissioner Roberts? You're muted. You need to.
So moved.
Are you making the motion?
I am making the motion.
And Commissioner Lewin, are you seconding it?
I would second that motion. Yes, Madam Chair.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. That passes unanimously. Other business, the oath of office for the reappointment of Commissioner Hirschbein. And we have with us Monique and I'm going to help me with the pronunciation, Monique, who is, if you would introduce yourself and then.
Hi, I'm Monique Lomelli, Chief Deputy City Clerk. First, congratulations, Mr. Hirschbein, on your appointment.
Thank you.
If you'll go ahead and repeat after me. I, please state your name.
I'm Michael Hirschbein.
Do solemnly swear or affirm
Do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation. I'm sorry, what was the last part?
or purpose of evasion,
Or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
about which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, Commissioner Hirschbein.
Thank you very much.
If you would unmute yourself and do a round of applause for Commissioner Hirschbein.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yay. Okay. Thank you so much, Monique. The next
welcome.
item is the consent calendar. These are routine matters that may be acted on in one motion. Before us are is 2A, the approval of the minutes of December 9, 2020. I believe Commissioner Roberts is recused on that item. 2B, Pinnacle View LLC, owners of a major architectural review for the construction of a 4,276 square foot single-family house on a hilltop lot located at 2275 Vista Distancia Court. And 2C, the vacation of a public right-of-way for a portion of Sunny Dunes Road located between Thornhill Road and Hermosa Drive in section 23. Can I have a motion on this item, Commissioner Hirschbein?
I'm supporting it and I'll make a motion, but before it goes to the vote, I just wanted to comment that Palm Springs is very lucky to have Sean Lockyer practicing in our city because his projects always exhibit a very high degree of architectural excellence. And I just think he needs to be noted for that. So thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
The motion has been seconded, made and seconded. Can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Song,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewin,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Vice Chair Maruzzi,
Yes.
Chair Wormick.
Yes, with pleasure. The next items are public hearings. Item 3A is Secondary Support Source Productions LLC doing business as Reforma Palm Springs, requesting the approval of a conditional use permit for a nightclub cocktail lounge at the J.W. Robinson's Building, a Class 1 historic site located at 333 South Palm Canyon Drive. Can I have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair. Let me share my screen and I'll do a brief slide presentation and then move on with the discussion. Can you see my screen now?
Not yet. Yes,
Is there?
yes.
Okay. So as noted, this is application Reforma Palm Springs is secondary sources, AKA on this particular application, proposing a nightclub cocktail lounge use in the tenant space at 333 South Palm Canyon Drive. For a piece of context, this is the building location in the center of your screen. Palm Canyon Drive is this major diagonal that you see here. And then you have Bellardo here and Baristo here. There's a large parking lot that's on the parcel, and there are commercial uses pretty much around it. There are hotel uses here on the west side. The proposed use, as I noted, is a restaurant, nightclub, and cocktail lounge or bar, and these uses are permitted in the central business district. The restaurant is by land use permit. The nightclub and cocktail lounge are with the approval of a conditional use permit. This is the floor plan of the proposed tenant space. It's approximately 9,000 square feet. There is an outdoor terrace area on the east or the Palm Canyon side of the building that's sectionized in two parts. This area here is the dance floor. This is the DJ stage. And these are tables that are part of the dining experience, as is this area. These are toilets. This area in the center is the kitchen. And then this is the bar area. The areas that you see in white around it are the adjacent tenant spaces. This one at the southernmost end is Bevmo, Orange Theory, and I believe the rest of these tenant spaces are yet to be occupied. So the review and approval process for this particular application has involved many applications. On February 1st, the HSPB reviewed the exterior alterations for the Class 1 historic site for the outdoor dining terraces. On April 5th, the AAC recommended approval by the Planning Commission. Upcoming after tonight's hearing will be a consideration by the City Council for a resolution of public convenience or necessity for an alcohol license. And then following that, we will process a land use permit for the restaurant use with outdoor dining in the CBD. These are illustrations provided by the project applicant's architect. These are showing the two dining terraces. The existing raised terrace exists on the east side of the Robinson's building, and these outdoor areas will be enclosed with a very minimal railing as required by the ABC, and the landscaping that are in the planters will be replaced with a softer, more appropriate landscape material for a dining area. These patio umbrellas and furnishings were approved by the HSPB in a subcommittee review. And I would just note, while these particular illustrations don't quite show it, the coloration of these umbrellas is complementary with the gold color that's in the masonry veneer units on the front of the building as well as on the fascia. So the proposed use is broken down into three parts: the casual bar with table seating, standing room for some lunch and dinner, simply beverages and snacks, a dining room that serves more formal full service sit-down meals, and then a dance floor that provides room for dancing and occasional live performances. These are their proposed hours of operation. The bar would be from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m., serving lunch and happy hour dinners. The dining room from 5 p.m. to 12 a.m., Wednesday through Saturday, dinner, and 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sunday for brunch. And the dance floor from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. Fridays and Saturdays initially, potentially adding Thursday and Sunday where appropriate. The applicant has made a number of proactive measures relative to general concerns and environmental factors for this particular use in this location. As you may know, on the Robinson's building, there are some clear story windows that pop up above the roof line in both the original 1958 portion of the building and in the 1970 portion. Light control in these clear story windows is important, particularly if there's going to be light features relative to the dance floor. And there are baffles that they are proposing on the interior side of those clear story windows that will prevent light spillage out of the dance floor area. Noise mitigation measures. They have identified that the main entry for the proposed use will be on the Palm Canyon Drive side, using the entrances or exits that are on the west side of the building for emergency use only. There's sound attenuation that's being placed in all the demising walls and the roof of the tenant space. The back of house areas are located east of the dance floor to further block any sound transmission emanating to, I'm sorry, I said east here, I meant to say west, that's my error. And then they are proposing a sound limiter on the audio system that will limit the decibel level of the sound system to prevent noise levels outside of the building and make sure that they are staying within accordance with the city's noise ordinance. We've placed a condition of approval on the project, recommending a security plan that would be approved by the Palm Springs Police Department, which is a fairly routine condition that we recommend for nightclub uses of this type. The CUP findings, as you'll note in the staff report, have been met. They are listed here. Want to call your attention, of course, to Part E, that are conditions that are being imposed and recommended. They are in attachment A with the draft resolution on this particular project. So in summary, briefly, this is what the existing building looks like now. This is the proposed. It's an adaptive reuse of a landmark building. It's invigorating the south end of downtown. It's a viable use for both tourists and residents. It's a local business owner and operator. The HSPB have approved the changes to the building, and the AAC has recommended those, and the conditions are recommended to mitigate impacts. Let me get out of shared screen here and get us back to that. So returning to your staff report, on the first page, it identifies the various applications that we've already talked about. Some of the illustrations that I've just gone through are there for you as well. This building, of course, was designated by the City Council as a Class 1 historic site in 2013, and the applicant has been working diligently, and the owner, I should say, not the applicant, in order to find suitable tenants for this building. And it has been a long time, especially with, of course, COVID events happening in this past year. The analysis of this project begins on page 6 of your staff report, in which we have analyzed this project against the findings for a conditional use permit. And as we've noted on page 8, the findings for the CUP can be affirmatively made. The findings for architectural review begin on page 8 and continue on page 9. And again, the AAC found that the project conforms to the guidelines for architectural review, and they have recommended approval by the Planning Commission. As noted on page 12 of your staff report, again, as I mentioned, the certificate of appropriateness was reviewed for this project by the HSPB. They formed a subcommittee which reviewed in detail the railings, the canopy, the furniture, and so on. And those are shown in your applicant staff report, in your packet. And then lastly, the land use permit and PCN resolution of public convenience or necessity will be processed subsequent to tonight's consideration of the conditional use permit. That pretty much concludes my presentation. The applicant is here and does have also a slide presentation that they would like to share with you, and they're available to answer any questions, as am I. Thank you.
Thank
you, Ken.
No, excuse me. There are questions of staff first. I'll open the public hearing later. With the Flynn, I think that's appropriate. So questions of staff? Are there any? Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you. So I don't know whether to direct these to Mr. Lyon or whoever of staff wants to take this. Understanding our noise ordinance, and there are a number of references to it here, I'm wondering if the same standards for our noise ordinance would apply for events outside. Now, nowhere in this application is is outside events mentioned, but typically at different times of year, bars and restaurants, particularly bars on arenas, want to do outside events, and they'll take over their rear parking lot or come into the front street. Pride is certainly a great example of that. And I don't see that mentioned anywhere unless I missed it. And in that situation, I wonder how we would handle noise guidelines with respect to our current noise standards. And I wondered if somebody could speak to that. Naturally, that would also be a question for the applicant, but I wanted to get staff's take on that first.
Sure. First of all, in terms of the noise ordinance does apply to both interior noise sources as well as exterior noise sources. And the measurement of noise or sound disturbances or nuisances are measured at the property line between the two properties or between the two zones. With respect to special events that you mentioned that tend to be outdoors, such as parking lot events and others, those events are normally processed with a land use permit. And quite often, the practice has been in the past with some of the outdoor events that the land use permit also does a temporary suspension of the noise ordinance. That's been handled in different ways over the past many years that I've been here with the city, but oftentimes the land use permit associated with outdoor events that are going to have amplified music or sound stages or things like that do involve suspension of the sound of the noise ordinance.
Yeah.
Excuse me, let me jump in just a moment. Based on recent discussions of City Council, there is no interest on the part of the City Council in suspending the noise ordinance. There has been discretionary enforcement in certain cases for temporary outdoor entertainment under COVID, but going forward, the noise ordinance, the city's noise ordinance would apply without suspension. So that is the current direction of the City Council. That would apply to any land use permits issued by staff or special events.
And thank you. That answers my question. I would like, as we get further into this application, to also discuss notification for the businesses around this application, simply because of the close proximity in the case that they intend to do outdoor events.
We'll get into that in conditions, but I've noted that we'll touch on that. Are there other questions for staff? Then I have some. This says that the main exit is through the front. Is there an exit for patrons through the back?
There's emergency exits on the west side of the building, yes.
And they're emergency, but they're not general exits?
The functionality of those exits on the west elevation, the applicant has informed me, will be handled as emergency exits, and they should confirm that to you this evening.
Thank you. Then some questions regarding noise on this. And I will get into that later, but what I don't see is that in the conditions, and I have received some tentative conditions regarding noise from staff, but is there a reason that they weren't put into the conditions in the application?
They actually are put into the conditions of approval. ADM 13 notes to comply with the city's noise ordinance. ADM 14 notes that control of noise with live entertainment is permitted on the dance floor only, and complaints are received. They shall have to enforce those and adjust the situation accordingly. The
limiter that is mentioned, and I want to thank the applicant for an outstanding noise study and report. There were two items mentioned that I'm curious about. The regulators at the corners of the property, how are those maintained? And is there a requirement currently that they be maintained over the years?
Madam Chair, you mentioned monitors.
There were certain points at the exterior of the property where they could monitor the noise at the edges of the property.
I'm going to have the applicant clarify that, but I believe that was temporary monitoring that was done by the acoustical consultant in order to get their readings for that report.
And not a permanent monitoring system?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And then the sound limiter inside, is that something that the applicant has control over?
That's my understanding, yes.
And not one that they would not have control over? And does it limit bass?
I'm going to rely on them to clarify that. That's a technical question I don't know the answer of.
Okay. And then the other question is regarding misters. I'm just concerned about the public use of the property on the exterior and the condition limiting or prohibiting misters. Does that prohibit stand-up misters as well as misters attached to the buildings?
No, if they were to envision some type of a mister that might be mounted on table umbrellas or other furnishings, we could consider that, but we would want to evaluate that. The issue with bringing water into misters and things like gas service into heaters becomes how does it get brought out to the dining terrace from the building? And what kind of surface mounted apparatus does that imply? The reason for the prohibition on misters and other devices was that that's the primary facade of a historic building, and the zigzag pattern in the precast concrete panels is an integral part of the design of it. And we wanted to make sure that we had control over those surfaces, that they did not get cluttered up or damaged with drill holes from piping, plumbing, and electrical and gas lines.
And couldn't you do that with a good plan?
I'm sorry?
Couldn't you do that with a plan that was vetted by the AAC?
It would come back to the HSPB in terms of a certificate of approval for alterations to the outside of a class 1 site, yes.
So that's possible.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, I will open the public hearing. The applicant has 10 minutes for the presentation and 5 minutes for rebuttal. If you'd introduce yourself, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. My name is Rob Giesica, and I am the owner of Secondary Source Productions, doing business as Reforma Palm Springs. I thank everybody for your consideration of this project. This project is a supper club in the historic J.W. Robinson department store building. I'll actually defer a lot because Ken's presentation was very detailed. And so I think what I'd like to do is add my screen and just spend a little bit more time talking about the actual concept itself, as opposed to a lot of the details that Ken already went over. So basically I want to cover two topics. The first is the actual concept that we have, and then the second being what we see our impact on the community being. So the concept is a daytime and nightlife concept for a part of town that I believe could use some revitalization. The folks that are involved in this are myself as the business sponsor and the driver of the concept. I also have a visual artist, Liz Ligori, who came in first she was going to do the lights for me for the nightclub component, but as we got into more conversations, realized that she was really helpful in actually developing the overall flow of the space. Next, I have Eric Hernandez, who is doing food and beverage for us. This was a great person to get to know. He came on board at Chill Bar, which is my other business, when COVID required us to start serving food. And we've had a great working relationship. And so I'm looking forward to working with him on this. And then finally, Bennett Binns Architects is coming in to design the space. And George Bennett and Stacy Binns are on the call to answer any questions that you may have. So I'll go a little bit into my background. I've been in Palm Springs for 6 years. I live in South Palm Springs and Montecito. And 4 years ago, on October 1st, 2017, my husband and I bought Chill Bar from Ron and John Wasser, or from Ron Bowden and John Wasser. We've taken that business and increased the revenue 33% from the time that we took over. And in fact, in 2020, we were on track to increase revenue another 13%. We take a really data-driven approach to the nightlife business in terms of controls and procedures. Looking at, how sales are doing, how social media is doing, inventory, all of the really hardcore, controls that are required, we manage through data. And then, as far as the previously to Chill Bar, my husband and I owned a fund administration business in New York and San Francisco. In financial services, we went through the financial crisis in 2008. And so, now, owning Chill Bar, faced with, the COVID pandemic. So sort of, definitely am a battle-tested executive in terms of, managing businesses through hard times. Particularly for this business, we've done a lot of work to figure out how this business is going to function if the COVID pandemic either returns or if it doesn't go away as quickly, as expected. So we're obviously happy to see that, everyone's getting vaccinated and that that's taking hold. But we do have plans that in case that didn't, work, that we would still be able to operate. I think now is a good time to just segue really quickly to answer one of the questions that the commission had. The plans for managing through COVID do not include outdoor dining. Other than the patio that we have for outdoor dining, you would make that work. As far as outdoor events, we don't plan on doing any outdoor events the way that they're done on Arenas Road. That's not part of our budget. I had a very positive conversation with the management over at Las Arenas and Del Marcos, and I don't think that it would be fair to them for us to set up in the parking lot the way that we do on Arenas. We'll skip over the other folks here. Certainly, you can circle back on those if anyone has questions, but since we have 10 minutes, we want to be a little bit cognizant of the time. The customer base that we're looking for here is really across the board, the most diverse customer base possible. Diverse in terms of gender, diverse in terms of age, diverse in terms of sexual orientation. We've started some of that at Chill Bar, although Arenas is known as the LGBTQ street. So certainly there's more LGBTQ individuals at Chill Bar. This is really meant to be a much more diverse group of people. And really we're looking for folks who are interested in music, who are interested in food, and who are interested in quality cocktails. Sort of am hesitant to say that this is going to be a high-end establishment. I would prefer to call it that everything that we're going to offer is going to be quality, because we're also looking to not exclude anyone and really have this be an inclusive environment. So really quickly, both at Chill Bar as well as here, our approach to nightlife is really to make it authentic, inclusive, and inspiring. I think the key takeaway from here is that we want to create an atmosphere where even somebody who knows absolutely no one coming in feels surrounded by a room full of friends. If you come alone to Reforma and you sit down and have dinner at the bar, we want that to feel like you can talk to the person next to you, that you can get on the dance floor and make new friends. We want that level of friendliness in the place, and that translates to the type of music that we choose. It translates to the decor. It translates to the door policy. To the extent that there is one. Those are the things that we're looking for. The authenticity is really important to us. We want to make sure that we're in this Class 1 historic building in Palm Springs. It's really unlike any other building in Palm Springs, and we want to respect that sort of the history of the building. We want to respect the history of the city, and then we also want to respect the people that are in Palm Springs. Both from really everyone, whether it be talking about sort of the food and the decor concept. We're drawing inspirations from Latin America. We have a very large population here of people from Latin America who have that background, and this is meant to pay homage to that culture. So we'll just sort of start with Mexico in terms of food, but then branch outward to Central America and South America, and so that authenticity needs to come through. Again, as I mentioned before, inclusivity. Events and venues are memorable because of the people who come, and so the more people that we can get in with from different backgrounds and different ideas, the better this is going to be, as far as people coming back again and how they feel about it, when they leave. We're not, the parties are successful because of the people that that come to the party, not by who was excluded from the party. And then finally, the inspiration, we want people to be inspired by the food and beverage program, by the decor that they see when they come, by the sound, which we'll talk about a little bit more, and then the entertainment and events that we offer. So Ken's obviously presented a really detailed overview of the layout and the floor plan. I'm presenting it here again. Here's a bit of the color scheme, and the things that we're looking at as far as the inspiration for the decor. So, Art Deco, but, from South America, modern, from South and Central America, modern architecture from, South and Central America. A little bit about the building, but I think everybody's fairly familiar with the building. For me, seeing the building for the first time, the key was really that you have this great space that you walk into on the south end, with a really high ceiling, so it's very impactful to the customer when they first come in, and then as they go to dinner or when they go to have drinks in the lounge area, the building drops down again, which works really well for us. For bathrooms, for a lounge that feels more intimate. For the kitchen space. And then, from that lounge, you then move into a space with a very high ceiling. So you sort of, create this drama in a space, where the ceilings aren't particularly high, but it makes it feel that much more just because you have this variability in the space. Food and beverage, I talked about a little bit in terms of it being, for everything from Mexico down to the tip of Argentina. And then we're working again with the sound engineers who worked with us at Chill Bar. We've had really great success there in terms of managing the noise, but also having it be a place where people recognize that it's high quality sound. I think the keys here really are, I think takeaways are, it doesn't have to be loud for it to be impactful. And we don't necessarily want it to be. We want people, the longer people stay, the more, the better that is for our business. And if we're drowning them out, if they can't have conversations, if people's ears are ringing, that doesn't translate to long-term stays in the space.
Madam Chair, we're at 10 minutes.
I'd let him finish.
Thanks, I appreciate that. So as far as the community, the economic impact here is 38 full-time equivalents representing roughly 65 hires. So across full-time and part-time people. These are long-term careers in management, food and beverage, security, as well as events. And then obviously there's the tax revenue for the city and the state. As far as the community, at Chill Bar, we're supporters of DAP Health, the Community Center of the Desert Rose Playhouse, the Transgender Wellness Center, various sports leagues, PSLOD, and also Greater Palm Springs Pride. And we expect to continue that support with this business as well. From my perspective, going down to that space, a regular basis, I think everybody's pretty familiar with what's happening at the building right now. I think adding the foot traffic, both during the day as well as in the evening, is going to be a very sort of gentle way of beginning to deal with the issue that exists at that space. We're planning on doing a premium exterior to match the beautiful exterior of the building. I believe having eyes and ears at nighttime. I know that there's differences of opinion concerning people leaving a nightclub at night. But I think having eyes and ears at nighttime makes the space safer for everyone as opposed to less safe. And we're a design conscious neighbor. I think, to me, having that art museum, the design center right across the street is really key. It brings everything together there. In terms of the quality, public safety and quality of life, the management team, our experience at Chill Bar, no issues that I'm aware of in the time that we've owned it. We have quality controls and procedures. We've already reached out to the Palm Springs Police Department to work on a security plan for this business, incorporating the best practices that they suggest to us. In terms of the noise attenuation, Ken's covered the majority of that. we'll have in-house security, which can be added to the parking lot. I know that was a suggestion from one of the letters that came in. Happy to do that. And I guess the last thing is in terms of, I know that there were a lot of letters and concerns about other businesses in the area that have sort of just generate noise. This is a completely interior space. The dining patios are meant to be just that. They're for dining, not for sort of extending the party out onto the street, which is, I know that that's different than Arenas. Arenas is sort of, the Bourbon Street of Palm Springs, and people expect to have, the party sort of continue between us and Hunters and everywhere else, but that's not the intention here. Those are dining patios. And so I think in terms of the noise that's of concern, we have the ability to really control that here with the way that the construction is done, with the way that, the sound is monitored inside the building. I'll just point out in the noise report that was done, that we submitted, there they've said, if we're doing 125 decibels at the stage, that we still have the noise control. That's incredibly loud. We would never, do that. That would be, painful for our guests. So we definitely have, even beyond the noise limiter, there's some room there for us to manage the noise or to have it be louder and still manage the noise. That's the end of my presentation. I thank you for the extra time. I sometimes go down a rabbit hole, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Are there members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Good evening, everybody. I would like to make a quick comment. I'm CJ Toby, the Director of Community Health at DAP Health, and I'm here tonight personally and professionally on behalf of DAP Health to publicly recognize the partnership between Rob and his team at Showbar and my team at DAP Health. Pre-pandemic, Rob and Showbar were always willing to partner with DAP Health by allowing us access to their customers, by providing education, testing, and linkage to medical and social support services that improve the health outcomes of everybody in our community. Through the COVID pandemic, Rob and Showbar, while faced with the emotional and financial roller coaster like many businesses continue to face, Rob and Showbar still worked with us during this time to discuss ways to better serve our community. So DAP Health is grateful not only for their contributions to the community, but how inclusive Rob and Showbar deliver their services. DAP Health is looking forward to another business with an owner of a proven track record in supporting everybody in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak or signed up to speak?
Yes, we would like to speak from the Desert Rose Playhouse.
Thank you. Introduce yourself.
Yes, here we go. Sorry. There we go. Hi, my name's Robbie Wayne. I am the artistic director for the Desert Rose Playhouse. This is my fiance, Matthew McLean, who's the managing director. And we have recently just moved into the old Zelda's nightclub space here in Palm Springs. And the reason that happened was because when COVID hit, we were in Rancho Mirage and we had to shut down due to space. And so we were literally, had no money, no anything. And I just want to speak on behalf of Rob Giseka and all of those guys on how they have literally helped keep us alive through all of this with their fundraising. Their community outreach has been amazing. They do at least 3 to 4 fundraisers for us every month. And if it wasn't for people like him and his team, then we would have lost another community theater in our own communities. And we're just forever grateful to those guys. And I wanted to speak on behalf of them and their track record for that. And just say that having yet another business that does that for the community, knowing that he's going to be spearheading this project is just a win for everyone. And it just, we're forever grateful. So we just wanted to say that today.
We look forward to being closer by too, because you're just, I realized the other day when you talked about this, you're just right down the street and we're pulling the arts and the entertainment down this way. And I think that's a great thing. So thank you. That's all.
Are there other members of the public who speak?
Jeff Hawker.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, thank you, Mr. Lyons, for your thorough presentation, and also to Rob for his. I've worked with Rob now since 2017 when he took over the Chill Space, doing a variety of different activations at the bar, and worked closely with him with the Arenas Road Merchants Association, as well as on Halloween Palm Springs. And I have to say, Rob is one of those team players that always says, yes, how can we work it out? He has also done a lot of work on elevating the experience of all the different bars on Arenas Road, because he is constantly upgrading and constantly doing additional improvements for that space. I also represent 420 Dispensary Bank and Lounge, kitty corner across the street. And we are thrilled to be able to have another space of an iconic building renovated and bringing up to the glory that they were when they were originally conceived. I have to tell you also, during COVID, Rob and his team were meticulous in making sure they were sticking by all the code enforcement, by working with police and fire. He is a team player. He always makes sure that he is working with all the city officials to make sure that he is abiding by the regulations. I am in full support of what Rob is doing for Performa Palm Springs. I think we need more entertainment, whether it be live DJs or cabaret singers in downtown Palm Springs, to bring more tourists to the downtown corridor. Thank you so much.
Are there other members of the public who wish to speak?
Madam Chair, we have one member of the public who would like to speak via telephone. I have Julie Montante on the phone, who is ready to provide her public comment.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Julie.
Hello, Planning Department. Good evening. I am in full support of Performa. P.S. We need a lot more entertainment. It's one of the ways that we're going to bring tourism back to our streets. I sit on the Village Fest, and we talked about opening in July, Village Fest back up, hopefully. And as you know, it's going to be very hot. So I'm in support of indoor entertainment. As you know, I opened the 420 Bank and Lounge. Thank you, JR. That was amazing to get through all that. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm in full support of that corner being activated, because all we have out there now are homeless and drug abusers and people beating up people every day. My security, the security from Green Dragon, has to basically chase them off every day. It's very, very sad. So I'm in full support of them opening up another entertainment supper club.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else?
Yes, I'm Matt Robinson.
If you would go ahead, please.
32-year resident of Palm Springs, and I fully support this project. I think it fits well in the building, and nobody questions his community support or how he operates his current business, it seems. The key is going to be activating the 300 South Block to get rid of the current problems down there. And having people on the street at night is going to make a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, if there are other, since people can't line up, if there are other members of the public who are here to speak, if you would identify yourself. There being no other members of the public who've identified themselves, the applicant has 5 minutes for comment or rebuttal.
So there were a few letters that I was sent copies of, which I just wanted to, some of this may be a little bit repetitive with what I've already said, but I know that, like, as I mentioned before, Village Pub and Moxie were mentioned as businesses that created a bit of noise. So I just wanted to point out that those, it's obviously difficult for them. They have outdoor patios, where the entertainment actually takes place. Without a wall, it's really difficult for them to stop the sound. We don't have that problem. at Reforma. So, again, to the extent that we, we're going to be building this out, in order to dampen the noise and not and comply with the city's noise ordinance. In terms of, there was a comment about low frequency noise and how that might not be stopped by a wall. I do have our sound engineer on the line as well, but the materials that are being spec'd out for the interior of the space, are able to stop that low frequency noise. So I just wanted to point that out. And then there was a comment from the management over at Las Serenas and Del Marcos about some things that they were hoping that we would include, or that you would include in the conditions. We're happy to have a security officer in the parking lot on the weekends in order to ensure that everyone departs that parking lot with as few disturbances to those hotels as possible. I think we've already talked about the fact that the front doors are going to be on Palm Canyon, and so we really, unless it's an emergency, no one will be exiting through the doors that face the hotels. And we're happy to provide them with telephone numbers that they can call if there ever are any issues. And they also requested a mandatory check-in after 1 year, but I assume that we're going to be checking in more regularly than that anyway. It mentioned before that we won't be doing outdoor events. And then those were the items that I wanted to respond to in the letters that I had read.
Thank you. If you would stay on the line, I'd like to open this up for questions to you from the commissioners. Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you. First of all, Rob, I'm excited for you. I think this is a good fit. I noticed in your bio that you said that one of your passions is architecture, and that's great because I'm a committed preservationist, and you're moving into my favorite building and my favorite commercial building in Palm Springs, and I know you're excited about that as well. I very much understand our HSPB limiting the use of misters, or they made that recommendation to us. And I wanted you to respond to that in as much as I believe we need to do everything we can to preserve the character of our historic buildings and resources. We do also have to adapt them to today's uses. And I was a little concerned in their request to prohibit misters, and I wondered if you wanted to talk to us about that, what that meant to you, and what impact that would have if it in fact had an impact.
Sure, thank you. So my understanding of the restriction on the misters, as well as on any speakers attached to the outside of the building, was really just that they were asking us to not attach them to the building. So our workaround for that was, and we've been busy getting ready for this hearing, as well as for the city council meeting for the PCN, and so I haven't had a chance to go to the vendor on this. But what I'm hoping is that we will be able to come up with a custom solution where the misters and any speakers that we have are attached either to the umbrellas that are being added or attached under the railings, which is not historic to the building.
Thank you. I want to just suggest that if this will have a significant impact on your ability to use your patios in the summer, and you can't come up with a freestanding solution, don't be afraid to come back to us and talk about it. I think a well-designed misting system that is subtle and gently connected to the building, in other words, that it could be easily removed if you vacated your space, is still viable in my head. So I wanted to put that out there to you. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Other questions of the applicant? Commissioner Song.
Rob, thank you so much for your presentation and painting a whole picture for us and giving us greater understanding. I especially appreciate that you have addressed the comments from the public, both in verbal and also in writing. That was very helpful. In Palm Springs, when Village Fest opens again, would you be able to also have security on Thursday nights? As you know, Thursday is sort of part of the weekend. You know that very well. So So that's one of the questions. The second question is, I believe I need the consultant to clarify that the receptor tests were done without the wall sound improvements, or were the improvements of the wall already accounted in the evaluation? Those are the two questions I had. Thank you.
Commissioner Song, I think it probably is appropriate to call the sound consultant. But before we do that, are there other questions of the applicant? And did you answer the first question regarding Village Fest?
I haven't answered that question. To the extent that it's necessary in terms of the volume of people, we're happy to add security on Thursday nights. As you saw in the hours of operation that Ken presented, we plan on adding Thursday evenings as the business gets up and running. So we want to make sure that we have a successful Friday night and a successful Saturday night. Once we get to a Thursday night, if we're open at that time, we should certainly add the security for the back, for the back parking lot, because I know that the businesses there are going to be interested in having us do that anyway.
Other questions for the applicant? I have some. So you would be comfortable with us adding a condition that there be no outside events or outside events in the parking lot?
I'm comfortable with that, yes.
Okay. And a little bit about your hours. Are you planning on having lunches? It looked like, I wasn't quite sure from what you had, whether you had a plan for lunches or not.
We do. So if you think about the space with the various suites that are there, the suite that's directly in front of Orange Theory, so sort of the narrower suite with the high ceiling to the south, excuse me, that will be serving lunch every day. So 7 days a week, opening at 11.
And in case you needed to expand, I actually love to see a lunch business there as well. I would actually like to allow you to do it in the dining room if you need to expand it into that. Is that something you ever have plans to do?
If it got to be successful enough where we needed the extra space in the dining room, we would certainly expand to that. I think one of the things I will mention is that when the Historical Site Preservation Board came back to us and they actually had us rejigger the dining patios a little bit, we may actually be utilizing that dining space, during the week somewhat, because the patio has moved north in that way, whereas before we sort of had a bigger patio to the south, but they didn't sign off on that.
Okay. And then I have some questions regarding the low frequency noise, but I think that's probably for your sound consultant.
Sure.
And is that person here?
He mentioned that he would be dialing in, so I noticed that there's a few people on the phone. I think the 805 number is him. So Kos, if you can unmute and join the call.
Hello, this is Colin Forrest with the Forrest Group, Inc.
And Commissioner Song, do you want to repeat your question?
Sure. When the study was done with the different points of the building at the 125 decibel, was that with the different results at different receptor, was that already considering the wall sound improvements that you're making in the building, or was that without?
So Palm Springs does not have any restrictions on low frequency, but we have built in the MLD to mitigate the low frequency as much as we can.
Can you explain that further?
Well, low frequency is the hardest thing to mitigate. And By putting the MLB in, it helps absorb the low frequency sounds to different areas depending on the direction of the low frequency sounds. So that's how we've designed the exterior walls, and the front side, the main entrance, with the glass partitions that we're going to put in.
For people who aren't sound engineers, what is MLB?
It's, hello, are you still there?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm on my cell phone, and yep.
We're losing you. Commissioner Song, did you have your question answered?
Yeah, I don't think he understood the question. They are proposing, anyway, I can re-ask the question or
re-ask the question. If he can hear, can you hear her?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so you're proposing wall construction improvements for sound, transmission blockage. When you did the test with the receptors, was that already considering the improvements to the interiors?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you.
Can you answer my question? What is MLB? Have we lost him, David?
He's still on the call. I'm sorry, Rob, what is the name of your sound engineer?
Coase Forrest.
Mr. Forrest, are you there? I'm not sure if his connection is cutting out.
I think it might be. If I can answer that question. So MLV is the acronym for mass loaded vinyl. And it's a type of building material that can be used to attenuate the low frequencies.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Then if there are not of the applicant, the matter is before the commission. Commissioner Hirschbein.
Thank you. Yeah, I am generally very in favor of the project. It seems like a great fit for that space. I don't know if it's I'd like to add a couple of conditions relative to things that have already been discussed. One would be a future review. And I think for the applicant, even 12 months might be too much. So I propose 6. And then as far as the rear exits, I'd like to make a condition that signage inside the building says emergency exit only. You know, there's scary ways to say, don't open this door. So I think we need language that makes that a requirement of the approval. And then I think we could put something in about security guards since it's already been agreed to by the applicant. I'd like to address the issue of attachments to the building. which would include heaters and speakers. I didn't realize there was a discussion about speakers on the exterior, so that kind of came as a surprise to me, but specifically heaters and misters. I think there are creative ways to provide them without attaching to the building. So personally, I wouldn't encourage the applicant to use attaching to the building as a default. I think he's going to run into some opposition from HSPB and certain members of the commission. But there are creative ways to provide both those things. It might be a little more convoluted, but I think you're going to run into some opposition if you try attaching those things to the building. That's just my opinion. It's predicting the future, but I'm just speaking from some experience, having seen those kind of reviews take place. So I'd be willing to make a motion to approve based on those conditions.
Commissioner Hirschbein, I will second, but I have some conditions as well. And I don't know if, what I'd like to do is still go around through the commission. And before we get to a motion for approval, to see if there are other comments.
Okay.
Are there, Commissioner Song?
Oh, I just want to put a word of appreciation of, again, repurposing one of the important buildings in downtown, and especially from the urban side, that you had made the entrance off of Palm Canyon and not from the parking lot. And so it really brings life to that street. So thank you.
Other comments? Commissioner Marucci, Vice Chair Marucci?
Yeah, in preservation, adaptive reuse is really the gold standard. And this building, this portion of the building has been empty for so long, it's been of concern. So I think the idea of a sophisticated restaurant and club going into that space, of all that apparently has been done to think it through, I'm very supportive of, and I'm looking forward to going there myself.
Other comments? Commissioner Roberts?
Thank you. So earlier in the conversation, Rob made reference to 4 suggested conditions that came in from one of the letters. And I think they're all covered, but I want to make sure that they're all there. Because he mentioned that he was happy to enlist those. And one was the 12-month mandatory. And I agree with Commissioner Hirschbein that maybe 6 months is even better. Once 6 months once they're up and running, to have them come back, or the condition could be to have them come back if we get any complaints or the city gets any complaints. So that's one possibility. I think the requirement for all patrons exiting the building at 2 a.m. using the front door makes a lot of sense. And I think the paid security guard makes a lot of sense for Friday and Saturday nights. I think it will also be smart to have people have a security guard to make sure as people exit the building, they get to their cars and so forth a little more safely. And I think the cell number and name provided to all the neighbors in case there are problems makes a lot of sense. And if those aren't already included as conditions, I'd like to do that.
I don't believe they had been. Commissioner Marucci?
I would prefer to stick with the 6-month review and not a single complaint trigger a review by us. I think we should at least give them 6 months because people can overreact to something and then all of a sudden they have to come forward. The applicant has to come forward. So that part of it I wouldn't support.
I have some additional, Commissioner Lewin, and I have conditions later.
Sure. I just want to say, I think this is a terrific project. I couldn't be more impressed with the thoughtfulness of it. And Ken, I also want to thank you, Mr. Lyon, for always delivering such a perfectly understandable description of what's before us with where it is in the process. So thank you. Everything I see here says that this project conforms to the intended use of this area of the city. And the only thing really before us is kind of this question of, in the future, would someday somebody hear something that might upset them? And we can't do prior restraint here. This is a great project. And I think having a review in 6 months or 12 months to make sure that there aren't any issues to be addressed makes sense. But outside of that, I welcome this all the way across the board. And I know it's going to be a great addition to the 300 block of South Palm Canyon.
I'm love the project, but we've also gone through Zelda's, and I think this is a much better operator and a classier operation, but I also want to be careful. So one of the things I would like is to add to Planning Commission, the Police Commission, it's POL2, that the operator shall implement and remain in conformance with the approved security plan at all times. Evidence demonstrating non-compliance with the approved plan may result in revocation of the conditional use permit in accordance with section 94.02 of the zoning code. In terms of hours of operation, I would like to let the director approve additional dining room hours if requested in writing by the applicant. And I do believe that the inclusion of Thursday and Sunday should be either a request for a modification of the land use permit or should be at the discretion of the planning director. I would like to say that misters may be installed on outdoor fixtures, umbrellas, et cetera, as deemed acceptable by the historic preservation officer, so that we allow that to happen. And there's some conditions that I asked staff for on noise. And I think they go along with what they're doing, adding Planning Commission number 9. In accordance with the project noise study, the operator shall ensure the sound pressure level 5 feet from the main stage of the nightclub restaurant shall not exceed 125 decibels during operation. PLN 10, in accordance with the project noise study dated 4/21/21, the operator shall install and maintain a hardware or software volume limiter as deemed acceptable by the planning director to ensure compliance with the noise ordinance. The operator shall maintain the sound system, including limiter, to ensure the compliance with the conditions of the permit. PLN 11, the installation of a sound monitoring stations at the exterior may be required, since they're not there, by the Planning Commission based on findings, reports, and complaints heard by the Planning Commission on periodic operational reviews. PLN 12, the applicant shall improve the interior of the tenant space utilizing appropriate techniques and materials to reduce sound transmission outside of the business interior as described in the project noise study dated 4/21/21. And PLN 13, low frequency base noise levels shall be limited and shall not create noise or nuisance to surrounding properties. And all of those, I believe, are in conformance with the study that we received from the applicant, but I believe need to be spelled out.
Madam Chair, I believe you've provided those to other people here in the planning department. Is that correct?
Actually, yes.
Okay. If not, if you'd like to forward those to me, I will incorporate them in the text.
Right. I believe they could be forwarded. The other thing I would like to include is that there shall be no outside events, as the applicant has stated that he's willing to state that and include as a condition. And mainly my comments go to incorporating the noise study that we received, which was excellent, into the conditions of operation so that they can be enforced. And we are giving a CUP, which could which does not necessarily stay with this excellent operator, but could the property could be bought by someone else who could operate in not as good a fashion. So I'm thrilled with your doing this. I just want it a little more definite. Commissioner Hirschbein, are those conditions from all of the people who have raised them to you acceptable to you?
I just had a couple of concerns, Chair Wormer. Your condition about the security plan, does it differ than what's already in?
Yes.
Let me just finish. Does it differ from what's already in the conditions as presented by staff plus what the law is or what the code is?
Possibly Mr. Newell could respond to that.
Because it sounds like what you're saying is one of our conditions is that they comply with the law.
No, I think what I'm saying is that they comply with the security plan. And our experience with Zelda's and the revocation of that CUP came from the applicant not complying over a period of years.
So what you're saying is non-compliance with the security plan is grounds for revoking the CUP.
Yes.
And is that not the law?
It's not explicitly stated in the code, and so having it in your conditions of approval is helpful for enforcement from a staff standpoint.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. As far as the attachment to the building of misters or heaters, if that's proposed, I would like HSPB to see it.
I didn't propose that. What I proposed was that they be allowed to do misters and heaters that are not attached to the building.
Oh, I thought you said if they wanted to get it attached to the building,
no,
that staff could approve it.
No, it was staff approval, but not of non-attached misters and heaters.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I thought you meant attaching.
No.
Staff could approve it. Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying that. And then on the last thing you mentioned had to do with outside sound monitors. And again, you and I had this discussion earlier. The projects on the north side, Fusion Beach, I think there was a big discussion about.
It doesn't require sound monitors. It's only that they could be required.
Yeah, it's just that it's
requiring them.
There was a big discussion about that in the Fusion Beach application, and it was pointed out to us that outside sound monitors are going to pick up outside sound if it's from that establishment, a car horn, a dog barking. So it doesn't. I wasn't convinced that that's an effective way to deal with sounds emanating from that establishment. Maybe there's other ways, but that specifically didn't seem to solve any particular problem because there's no way to say that decibel jump came from that establishment.
I'd be happy to remove that.
Okay, so those are my comments. Thank you, and I'll accept everything else.
Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you. Commissioner Hirschbein's last comments resonated, and the sound monitors can be effective in picking up a consistent noise or consistent sound where you'd have a car, horn or a dog bark. That's just one pop of sound. But let's say we have a DJ'd event going on and consistent music. You'd be able to track that at a specific time, and you'd then be able to connect it to the source. So as an example, if Rob had a full tilt, dance show going on in the club, and they were picking up a lot of consistent noise, you'd be able to connect that. So I personally think, at least for the first year, having the sound monitored is a good idea. The people that operate those know how to use them and know how to decipher them. And if Rob's okay to do it, and the city's, as a rule, is requiring that, I think it's a good idea. With respect to what Commissioner Hirschbein was talking about, it was especially crucial with, I forget the name of it, Fusion, because that was having outdoor sound. That was around a pool, and that was an outdoor event house. This is very, very different. I frankly don't see where Rob's going to have problems, but I do think it's a good idea to monitor it, and it'll help him as well, I think.
That's up to you, Commissioner Hirschbein. The item I requested wasn't that we put them in, but they could be, the Planning Commission could request them in the future.
Okay, so could request them in the future or could require them in the future?
Could require them in the future.
Madam Chair, I can pull up all the conditions that you've. put
Yes,
together thus
please.
far.
It's, I don't know. I just from what we've been, the deliberations we've gone through in the past about these is they just don't seem that effective. But, you know, it's probably pretty hypothetical. So if it's going to be a sore point, I'm willing to put it in there as a ask. But I think the ask should be from staff, not from commission.
That's fine with me as the seconder, Commissioner Roberts.
I'm fine with that. I think the language that just went in as we're speaking makes perfect sense and solves it.
Can you read it? Because it's very small on my screen.
Certainly. So it says the installation of a sound monitoring station on the exterior may be required by staff based on findings, reports, and complaints heard by the city at periodic operational reviews.
Okay. And did we put something in there about a 6-month review by Planning Commission?
Yep. It's the first one here, 6-month review by Planning Commission. There was a comment about having the director, unless the director determines a review is required sooner based on documented complaints. And so I guess that was never determined if that should be kept or not.
I'm fine with keeping it. That's if there's, I don't expect there to be, but if there's big complaints, I think there should be some recourse.
And then there was comments about security on Thursday nights that was not included in this list of.
What I would rather do, well, I think security on Thursday nights when staff approves Thursday and Sunday hours. I wouldn't require it on Thursday nights if they weren't operating on Thursday.
And David, I think you can combine number 4 and 7 because they both talk about misters.
Okay, I think we have it, unless there's anything that the commission would like to modify.
I just have one more thing. It says speakers outside, but do we have any limiting on that? I don't remember. That's the only reference to speakers outside that I know of.
I'm not sure why we would have speakers outside.
I believe the applicant was looking for ambient music at a conversational level on the dining patio.
can we include, if we do speakers outside, can we have it for ambient music? Can we include something that limits it to ambient music at a level that people can carry on a conversation?
Yes.
Madam Chair, we'll use the same language that we've used in other applications in the past relative to ambient music.
Thank you. Commissioner Hirschbein, are you okay with that?
Yeah, it just was never mentioned anywhere else. And I just wanted to make sure that we're, it's part of the whole review. So yes.
And we'll make sure that that's limited to the east dining patio only.
Chairwoman, I just want to remind David on item 3. Sorry, I'm talking as you're typing, and that's what happened with item 3. Thursday night, when the business plans is to open additional nights, and I believe Chairwoman was talking about also Sunday.
Well, I think security on Thursday nights when the business opens on Thursday nights.
Correct.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Maruzzi.
Yeah, I'd just like to hear from the applicant if they are in accordance with the requirements that you've added, specifically number 10 about the hardware or software volume limiter.
So I can answer affirmatively to that. I'm fine with that. I mean, this is the improvements that are in that noise study are required in order to meet the Palm Springs noise ordinance. So it has to be done. In terms of the volume limiter, again, the 125 decibels that's referenced here is extremely loud, and I don't see that we would really ever be there. So I'm absolutely happy to agree to that as well.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments before we take a vote? And I can't, if people would respond with voice, because I can't see your raised hands if you have them. There being no other comments, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Yes.
Chair Wormuth,
Yes, and I just want to say that I think we need a nightclub, and I'm thrilled that you're doing this.
Commissioner Irvin, Commissioner Irvin,
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, okay, yes.
Commissioner Lewin,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Song,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Maruzzi.
Yes.
The matter is approved unanimously. Good luck to you.
Thank you. And thank you to the entire commission.
Does anybody need a break, or can we go straight to our next item? Straight to the next item, okay. Item 3B, Susan Holden on
Madam Chair, I
behalf.
think Mr. Hirschbein and Ms. Song had a request for a break.
Oh, okay, we will
5
take
minutes?
a 5-minute break.
Thank you, Chair.
The next item before us is item 3B. Susan Hooton on behalf of Demand Candy Inc. for a conditional use permit to operate a 2,209 square foot type N non-volatile infusion cannabis manufacturing facility within a vacant industrial building located at 1251 Montalva Way, Unit J. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Before I proceed, let me just share my screen with you. Okay, all right, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So thank you, Madam Chair, once again. So the application is for a conditional use permit to operate a type N. Oops, just a second. This is not working here. Yes. All right, okay, I'm sorry. All right, so the conditional use permit is to operate a type N manufacturing cannabis facility. Just a brief background. Type N manufacturing is for infusion only. It doesn't include the use of any type of chemical solvents. It doesn't include the use of any type of chemical at all. It is straight infusion. The applicant will be buying the materials needed for the infusion from other manufacturers to carry out the manufacturing process. Also, the applicant did receive the city regulatory permit number C 2020-103 on December 23 of last year. The place, the location, you might be very well familiar with it at this point because this would be the number 5 CUP application from that location that we bring in before the Planning Commission. Specifically though, Unit J is only 2,209 square feet and only 298 square feet of that location will be used for manufacturing and processing of the cannabis products in that location. The next slide is, this is not working. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Okay, there. So the next slide is the aerial of the site and its surroundings. So on this arrow here, this is the building and this is the parking area. As you can see, there has been much improvement from the last time that another CUP from that location was presented to you. Since that time, the parking lot has been restored and there is new striping. The landscaping have been installed as imposed as relevant to the condition of approval that was imposed on it the last time around. We brought another project in that location to you. Again, the site is surrounded mostly by industrial usage, and to the west of it is the Palm Springs International Airport. Across the street from the site, there are other similar industrial uses and offices. And to the south of it is an ambulance company there. So the uses are very similar, given that it is an M1P zone. And the next slide here shows some protected uses and their distances from the location. So chief amongst them are the 2 residential or the 3 residential uses. The Rancho Vista Estates, which is about 2,300 feet away from the location. And then the Chair residential use, which is 726 feet away from the location. Also, there is a city park. It is approximately 1,475 feet away from the location. The 2 schools are also the Montessori School and then the Stepping Stone School do not fall under the threshold of the distance required. It's only 600 feet required distance required from the location. Both of them are well above those thresholds. And then lastly, there is the Escena community, which is approximately 2,359 feet away from that location. So this next slide is the overall site plan of the building itself. There are 13 units, and according to records, 10 of the units are currently occupied, although not all of them are functioning yet. So this arrow here depicts the Unit J, where which is the subject of tonight's CUP application. Again, it is 2,209 square foot area. And specifically, this is the floor plan of the unit. And you can see the spatial uses breakdown. Manufacturing and processing is 298, and then followed by the rest of them: distribution, storage, office, and the entry hallway, all of them totaling 2,209 square feet. The applicant did submit an odor control plan to the city's consultant. It was reviewed and approved without further comments. I believe the consultant is also here tonight to speak to it. But the odor control plan will feature carbon filter scrubbers. It will have a built-in closure, and we have continuous insulation throughout the 4 sections of the wall where manufacturing and processing will be taking place. Also, all the openings will be caulked, will be gasketed, and weather strips to prevent infiltration or exfiltration of odors from the unit. Here I do have the section drawing of the odor control plan and the unit where the space where manufacturing will be taking place. Again, this is the picture of the site. This is how it looks today. And this too just shows the unit itself, Unit J, that is the subject of the CUP application. So finding staff was able to make required findings for the CUP application. It does conform to all the separation distance requirements and protected uses and other criteria as required in our zone. There will be an enhancement on the interior that will help to implement the odor control plan. And of course, I did make all the necessary findings and conforms to all the criteria for the approval of a CUP. So staff will be recommending that the Planning Commission adopt a categorical exemption under the guidelines of CEQA because the use does not meet or falls under the threshold of a further initial study preparation or any other assessment, CEQA assessment for the use. There are no hazardous materials in the location. Therefore, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt a categorical exemption and approve the conditional use permit subject to all the conditions that are attached, and if there would be any additional conditions as may deem fit by the Planning Commission. So that will be the end of my brief staff report. I believe the applicants and their representatives are also on the Zoom. So if there are any questions, I'm available. So are the applicants. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Questions of staff at this point? Commissioner Hirschbein?
Thank you. Couple of questions, Edward. So type N does not include growing or processing the buds, but you mentioned infusion. Can you tell me what infusion means?
Yes, infusion is creating cannabis products by adding cannabis extracts into a recipe. And those products that are used for infusion are usually manufactured by third party, and that's where the applicants will be getting them from. There will be no cultivation of any kind that are involved with type N licensing.
Okay, On the summary on the first page of your report, you say that a CUP is required for a dispensary and for lounge activities. I don't notice those things.
No, yeah, and I caught that this evening. That was from the template of a previous report. So those do not apply to this application at all. There will be no dispensary. There will be no lounge. This is just a type N manufacturing only.
Okay, so the public doesn't go in here.
No, the public doesn't go there.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Are there other questions of staff? Can you tell us, oh, Commissioner Song, please. Commissioner Song?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Could you speak about the 1,000-foot radius requirement in regards to manufacturing? How is that related?
Yeah, so if this was a type 6 or type 7 manufacturing process, it would have required that there be a 1,000-foot separation from the location to the nearest residential use. But again, this is only a type N, so the separation requirement is different than that of type 6 and type 7.
Are there other questions of staff? Can you tell us how many other cannabis facilities are at this location and what they are?
Yes, so far, according to our records, again, there are, we granted 4 conditional use permits, and there are 3 regulatory permits on that location. So one application was withdrawn. There is Curiously Incorporated, is a type 6 manufacturing. There is the Montalva enterprise, which occupies 4 of the 13 units. It's a type 7 manufacturing. And then there is a dispensary and lounge in unit F. It only required a regulatory permit. And then in unit G, there is Higher Visions Distribution. That's only distribution, doesn't include manufacturing or cultivation. And that only required a regulatory permit. There is in unit H through I, there is Nature's Healing. It's type 7 manufacturing. There was a CUP granted for that use. And then unit J, which is the subject of tonight's CUP hearing. Unit K, there is transportation and distribution only. They only required a regulatory permit. And lastly, in unit M, there is Floor Cannabis. Which is also a type N manufacturing. You granted the CUP for that location a few months back.
And is there a grow facility there as well?
No, there is none. So if you recall, excuse me?
I thought we did grant.
Well, so you're probably talking about Montalva Enterprise. So the limited, they are used to type 7 manufacturing only.
So they were approved for cultivation and changed the use?
To type 7, correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Roberts. Oh, and then Commissioner Irvin.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So I have some questions for the applicant, but I'll wait for that to happen after the applicant speaks. Veronica, are you present with us for questions?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi there. Veronica, my questions are specifically about enforcement of odor odor mitigation in other areas. So I know when we originally wrote a lot of the original policy on this, we were having problems in certain parts of town where we had a high concentration of businesses. And I know manufacturing versus grow, the types of activities that take places in these different businesses that relate to cannabis make all the difference. And I'll get to questions to the applicant on this one when we get to that time. but I wanted to ask you your take on this, on how much odor, from your experience, you think could potentially be emitted from this business. And then my second question to you is, how are we doing on enforcement, say in the Desert Highlands neighborhood, where we know we had some problems in the past, and I haven't had any updates in quite a while on that?
From my understanding and from actually going out to some of the type N facilities that are operating, the smell is very minimal. I went to one and you actually smell the baking of the product over the cannabis because it was so limited, the amount that was used. With regard to enforcement, we are presently reviewing our budget for the next year and are going to be expanding our odor control enforcement. We had previously talked with 15,000 about doing that for us, and they had provided us with a really nice outline of what they can do. But because of COVID, we were not able to proceed with that. So we are looking at adding that back into our budget. And I know that we are actually looking to add 2 code enforcement officers who are dedicated strictly to cannabis, because unfortunately, right now, we don't have anyone who's dedicated to do cannabis enforcement. So it's strictly complaint driven for any type of response.
And how are complaints these days? Can you give us a picture of what that looks like in the earlier days? I'm going back a few years here. We were having a problem with a few of the businesses, and not because they didn't want to solve them. We just were learning how to do that. How are the complaints these days? How many and how often do you get them?
So since I did have them run the stats, since October 1st, 2020 until today, we've had 19 odor complaints. They still are primarily in the Desert Highland Estate area. I know that the cultivators in that area have made extensive changes to their building and are continuing to make them. They're still working on their plans to update one of the buildings that was problematic, but there has been a tremendous improvement. I mean, as far as any other areas in the cities, we have not had any complaints.
My understanding of what we're looking at right now is this is an infusion of the oils into edibles. In your experience, how high a risk are we for odors to be emitted, not only into the building itself, but out of the building?
They're very minimal because what they typically use are like cannabis butter or different types of oils, and it's all pre-packaged, so there's no odor. And it's put into, most of the times they're making candies or different types of edibles, and you smell the other products, like the baking products, over the cannabis.
Thank you so much, Veronica.
Commissioner Irvin, and what I would like to do is after Commissioner Irvin, limit our questions for a few minutes to Veronica. Commissioner Irvin?
Yeah, I just got a quick question. How many of the old applicants do we still have lingering over in that specific area?
In this specific location?
Mm-hmm.
So there's only one that's been withdrawn. David, help me out here. I'm not aware of any other outstanding application for that location at this point. So, David, do you have any?
They haven't submitted any. If we do, I don't know if Veronica has anything that she might still have for applicants who haven't submitted their land use entitlements yet. But from the planning applications, we don't have any other ones, as far as I know, off of Montalva.
Okay. And a follow-up question, the 2 officers are the code enforcement that are going to be added. About how soon will those code enforcement be added?
If approved, it would be with next fiscal year. So July.
All right, thank you.
Other questions for Veronica? I have some. In the past, you said that there's nobody currently dedicated to cannabis.
Correct.
In terms of code enforcement. So none of that runs out of your office right now?
No, code is under police at this time.
And are there hours that the police don't function?
There are. Right now, the code is limited from, I believe it's 7 to 5:30. There's additional hours, but that's limited to vacation rentals.
So anytime between 7 in the morning and 5:30 at night, any other time, there's no one there to take complaints or to enforce them?
No, there's not. They can use the app to log the complaint and it would be followed up the next day.
But an odor complaint that comes in, say at 6 o'clock at night, might not be noticeable the next day at 8 o'clock?
Correct.
And of the complaints you've received, how many of them fit into those time periods?
I don't have that data available to me right now. I would have to follow it with police.
Is it something that you could follow up and send to us?
Absolutely.
And are you in control of those complaints? What's your role in handling them versus code?
They're forwarded to me, but primarily it's code who's responding to them and code who's making the findings and just providing me that follow-up after.
So we don't actually know who is we actually don't know what odors are emitted in the evenings.
We do. If we have a code officer from Vacation Rentals, they have done us the courtesy to follow up and drive by and check for odors. It's really difficult because usually by the time, because especially with the wind patterns I heard, it's really difficult to trace the actual complaints, which is why we want to work with 15,000 for the odor control compliance aspect of it, because they can better assist us in identifying what is causing the odors and how to remedy it.
How many of the cannabis operators that you've had complaints about have been shut down?
None.
And how many complaints would you say you've had over the years that you've been operating?
In the beginning, prior to us implementing the odor control plans, we had several. They were, I would say, in a year, there was probably 50. But since we started implementing the odor control plans and actually following up and having inspections for the operators, they've decreased. Like I said, there was 19 between October 1st and now.
And then we've recently been requiring that the equipment be checked at 6 months. And I think it's 3 months, 6 months, and then a year, every year thereafter at the applicant's expense. How many, do you have statistics on those checks and who's doing them?
We only have one operator at this time who's actually up and operating. And I know 15,000 has been out there several times, more than what was required of the applicants.
So we've only got one that's fit into those. Do any of the other, I think it's 67 operations, am I correct on that?
We have 67 operations, but that's between 34 actual permits. So some of them have multiple operations at their facilities. So that's why the number's higher.
So you have 34 permits, and so there's only one of those 34 permits that is having inspections of the equipment as it starts up and then continuing inspection.
They're the only one requiring it. The bulk of our permits that are operational are dispensaries. 21 of those permits are dispensaries.
Okay. And is there a difference if you've been having code in your cannabis or your vacation rental people helping out with this? Are they under your control or are they under the police?
No, they're all under the police.
And so with vacation rentals, there are some people that work in the evenings?
Yes.
But not cannabis, and only as a courtesy for you?
Correct. Yeah, if I get a call, I'll forward it to, I know who's on duty, and I'll forward it to them, and they're very responsive. They'll help out.
Thank you. Are there, Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yeah, I just had a question about what's the most complaints a single operator has gotten? Do you know that?
I would say 90% of the complaints we received are for one operator.
For one operator, okay, and that operator is still operating?
Yes.
So is that a lack of enforcement, a lack of follow-up, or has the operator improved his operation?
They have been very cooperative. They've worked with 15,000. I mean, Jay could probably answer that question better, the amount of work they've done and what they are continuing to do. I know that they have extensive renovations planned for the one facility that has continued to be problematic.
When was the last time a complaint was lodged against them?
That would be in, it was February.
February.
So they have improved.
Well, this is April. Okay. And so at what point would you shut somebody down? Because if 90% of your complaints are coming from one operator, that would suggest they needed to be shut down. In my analysis of it, maybe I'm wrong.
We have had them work extensively with the odor control consultant. I know that where they're at, if this last planned renovation of the facility is not successful, then at that point they will be considered to be shut down.
And what's that process?
That would be just an administrative. We would administratively revoke the permit for non-compliance with the code.
That would be you or the police or what?
The police would enforce it. Our department would issue the revocation.
Okay. And is there a time frame at which they have to complete these modifications?
I'm going to hand that over to Jay because he's been working with them, and I think he has further information on the process of what they're doing.
So your office, though, isn't requiring it be completed by a certain date?
I know our city attorney has been working with them to narrow the dates, but the amount of renovations is really extensive what they're doing, which is why we're trying to work with them.
Yeah. But in the meantime, they continue to produce their product?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Maruzzi?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Jay, to hear his responses.
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak, let me speak to a couple things, if you don't mind, based on what I just heard. Going back to begin, every applicant that gets an approval through the Planning Commission for a conditional use permit, they are required to provide a complaint form available to the public. So if there is a specific complaint from the public that the applicant or that the public has against a specific applicant, in addition to going to the city, they can go directly to the applicant themselves and receive that official complaint form. That is done. I mean, obviously that's not going to happen a lot, but it's done to attempt to try to find out where the complaints are coming from. So that is a possibility to kind of make a little bit more determination of where the complaints are specifically coming from. Regarding the one applicant had 90% of the complaints, I'll get the best way to explain it is from the gap between what they had and compliance was a mile wide. Right now, that gap has been reduced to about an inch wide. The only issue with that last inch, which they are agreeing to do, is that that's a 7-figure construction project at this point. That last inch is a massive remodel of that building in order to bring it into compliance. That is something that they've stated that they're willing to do. They have shown that they're willing to work in that direction. And so far as I've been told, they've been doing that in good faith. Any questions?
Commissioner Lewin.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think I'm getting a little confused. Are we talking about the property that's before us at this point, or are we talking about, because I'm not sure.
One of the issues with the property that's before us is how well the enforcement is, because although we're we're near residential communities and in a building that has a number of cannabis facilities. So I had asked both Veronica and the head of code compliance to come and talk to us tonight about that issue. We will go back to the project that's in front of us. But one of the issues that comes up with cannabis, because we've received a number of neighborhood letters, is concern both about odor and also concern about enforcement.
Okay,
and whether or not there is adequate enforcement of the conditions that we approve and the emanation of odors.
And Madam Chair, if I could observe for myself, and I'm not suggesting the city has a problem with enforcement, but if so, it won't prejudice me on the vote of this particular application, although I think the information is really important to know. I feel like I want to remind myself that this is a public hearing and we are supposed to strictly look at what the application is. And I just hope that we're all thinking that whatever this application is not.
If your question is to Jay in terms of odor emanation from this building and this applicant, that would be welcome.
I can happily address.
I don't have any questions.
If you don't mind me adding, Madam Chair, regarding just licensing, not even applicants, licensing for a type N is limited to pre-sealed distillate. Distillate is post-extracted, generally odor-free. So when a type N manufacturing facility is working with cannabis distillate, they are bringing in pre-sealed distillate that is odor-free and using it only in the areas listed as manufacturing, which is listed as a couple hundred square feet here. Go ahead. I was going to say generally distillate is odor-free. So this would release odorous cannabis activity of all licensing.
So the odor control plan that they have, does it contain, it both contains, it sounds like it's sufficient to contain any odors?
Yes, very confident.
Or excessive to contain odors?
Yes, I would say relative to a type N installation, this is the standard for the city of Palm Springs, as it should be, but this makes sure that no odors would escape from this facility. It's above and beyond for a type N facility.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of Veronica or Jay before we open the public hearing? Or staff? Seeing none, can we open the public hearing? If the applicant is here, you have 10 minutes.
Hi, this is Susan Hooton regarding 1251 Montalva Way. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello. Okay. I'm as far as the odor control goes, I've been doing this process since 2012, and the only odor you smell is the candy. Everything that I use is low odor distillate, and my process is non-volatile, and the only thing you smell is when the candy's dehydrating, you smell gummies. You don't smell any cannabis. Right now I'm in a kitchen in Cathedral City working under someone else's license, and it's a very small kitchen, and the only thing they can smell from me is candy.
Do you have anything else to present on your application? You do have 10 minutes if you wish to.
We did is we set up an infusion area where it's totally sealed and it has a carbon fiber exhaust in there to take out any smell. And then in our other area, we have an enclosed area where we do all the packaging. Everything's sealed in bags and then stored in the vault. It's a pretty simple process and it has no smell whatsoever. That's all I really have to say. There is no smell. All you smell is gummies. I smell more from the distribution next door than you would smell from me.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak?
Hi, this is Neil Garrett. Can you hear me?
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm part of the El Rancho Vista Estates neighborhood organization. And I just wanted to make sure that I pointed out that on the staff report, the 726 feet delineation was actually our neighborhood. So I'm not familiar with Rancho Vista Estates, which was noted as 2,300 feet away. But the El Rancho Vista Estates neighborhood is 726 feet away from this property. We're concerned because this is a Wexler and Harrison historic neighborhood. And as has been mentioned, there's a saturation in this location on Montalva Way of manufacturing facilities. And we're just concerned with the volume as well as potential odor. I have walked over to this facility and the largest of the manufacturing facilities of the CUP that was granted is currently not even operating in the building. So the odor control or the odor that would be emanating from that, we don't know what that would be at this point because it doesn't look like it's been tested. I understand that there is enforcement. We are very concerned with the quality of life in our neighborhood and the fact that, the saturation in this building. The only other comment I had is really the type in license and the distance requirement. If the type in followed the same guidelines as a type 6 and 7, which they're all manufacturing, then we couldn't even have this facility be granted because it's within 1,000 feet of our neighborhood. I think it's a point to make is that the Montalvo Enterprise cup that was granted before the 1,000-foot requirement was amended into the ordinance. So I just really wanted to point all those things out. I know that, based on Mr. Robertson's report and what the type of facility is requesting, that in the current guidelines, everything falls into place and they can get their cup granted. But on behalf of the neighborhood and a concerned resident, I just think that things should be notated for future, if there should be some future guidelines put in place for facilities like this. Thank you.
Are there other members of the public who wish to speak?
Yes, hello. This is Craig Rushing. I'm also a resident of El Rancho Vista Estates. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you for allowing us to speak. My biggest challenge after hearing all the information, to kind of echo what Neil was saying is, we still have a concern about the odor, but kind of to piggyback off what Neil brought up is the fact that there's not really a great plan for enforcement. It doesn't sound like. It sounds like we're lacking in enforcement, and there's quite a few facilities, it sounds like, in that area. How will we know where those orders are coming from? And it sounds like it would create potentially an ongoing public nuisance with the odors. Additionally, utilizing the vacation rental code enforcement sounds to me a little problematic. I mean, we have quite a few vacation rentals in our neighborhood. And if we were to walk outside, for instance, and smell cannabis, who's to say where it's coming from? And if vacation rental code enforcement comes out, that could create problems with, people just enjoying their stay in our neighborhood. So it just sounds like it's kind of complicating things a little further than it needs to be in terms of, this type of business being so close to the neighborhood, really less than 1,000 feet from the first homes in Rancho Vista Estates. So, again, enforcement to me is the biggest problem. And I can't see that the city, I mean, it sounds like the plan is to bring someone in July, and that doesn't sound like it's even set in stone at this point. And I guess that's it for me. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
My name is Richard McKilligan. I'm also in El Rancho Vista. I have two questions. I guess 1 point and 2 questions. One, regarding the code enforcement. There's a problematic property in this neighborhood, and code enforcement had received literally hundreds of complaints, including violence. And until I participated in a code enforcement meeting, a Zoom call late last year, the officer Villegas, I think his name is, he said he wasn't even aware of the problem. And this had been going on for 2 years. So the fact that, there was a huge problem in our neighborhood that's still not resolved, that I don't have any confidence that complaints about odor are going to be addressed. And I have one of my questions is, you're saying that you're not going to require the 1,000 feet distance for type N licenses. And are you enforcing any distance requirements, or is it just the 600 feet distance that's required under the state law? And a question for the operator, I believe she said that all you can smell is gummies, but is that the only thing that is included in infusion processing? Or are there other products that could potentially be done under a type N license that would produce other kinds of odors? And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak? The applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal.
To answer the gentleman in the residential area that's close to me, no, in type N infusion process, I will not use anything else in my process other than the low odor distillate. You won't smell anything that I do from there. I don't do anything else that would make any odors or anything like that. Our process is very simple, and you don't get any odor from it. There's more odor that you come from cultivation than anything. The infusion process, there is no smell. And that's it for me.
Now before the commission. Oops, thank you. The public hearing is closed unless there are questions of the applicant. So before I close it, does anyone have questions of the applicant? Seeing none, the matter is before the commission. Commissioner Maruzzi.
I did appreciate the discussion regarding enforcement and the other aspects of how this policy has been implemented over the years. But to Commissioner Lewin's point, I think we need to focus again on this particular applicant. And from what I've heard, and with Jay's expert opinion, I don't think we have an issue here with odor. And I very much want to support this applicant and move forward. But of course, I have to wait from others. But I would make a motion if that comes to discussion.
Is there further discussion on this item? Commissioner Lewin.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And And I also appreciated the background. And I guess I'd like to ask Jay now, we've heard the applicant say, hey, this is really a candy making operation that has an infusion process. And I think that a lot of people in the public may not understand that this type N is wildly different than a growing operation or an extraction operation. Do you feel that the applicant characterized their process accurately for us as commissioners?
100%. The most odorous activities in the cannabis licensing at the state level are type 7 manufacturing, but that's only for a moment when you open a column. But for the most part, it's cultivation and then type 7 manufacturing. From there, your odorous activities drop tremendously to type 6, where they go down. Distribution, obviously, you're dealing with packaged equipment. And that's the same here in this condition in type N and also in type P. You're dealing with third-party sealed containers of odor-free distillate. So yeah, she characterized her activities correctly. She's limited by her license to only manufacture certain things. And all of those fall into that infusion.
I really appreciate that, because I think that when I look at this to my fellow commissioners, I say, I hear about a candy store trying to make candies in a highly controlled, highly ventilated, super carbon filtered environment. And to me, this meets all the standards that the city has set forth. And there are concerns with other operators that may not be doing the same thing, but everything I've heard about this applicant, I'm going to support it because I think that they deserve a fair chance. And I think that all of our key staff people have said that this is all just right above board. I want to hear from other commissioners. Otherwise, I'm happy to support Vice Chair Maruzzi's motion that he indicated he would make. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jay.
Is there any other comment? There being none, I see a motion and a second on this, but I did have a comment before then. I have been concerned about enforcement with cannabis, and I thought it was important for the public to have a sense of what the enforcement is. And I would like to discuss this for a moment with the commission after we deal with this application. But we have a motion, a second in front of us, and no comments. So would you call the roll, please?
Vice Chair Maruzzi?
Looks like Michael has something he wanted to say.
So does the motion include the staff report recommendations?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It would also include the staff conditions, which are similar to the conditions we've included on other applications.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Okay, thank you.
So was my name called? If it is, yes.
Commissioner Lewin?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Song?
Yes.
And Chair Womack?
Yes. This is approved unanimously.
Chair Wormuck, we should move forward because you'll be in total darkness within about 3 minutes.
I know. What I'm going to do is, if you can bear with me for a second, I'm going to move inside.
Or you could get a scary flashlight and hold it under your chin.
Sorry.
I like that we can hear her go inside.
She stubbed her toe.
She said, ouch.
Moving right along. We have no unfinished business. Planning Commission reports and comments.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lewin has a brief report on the Housing Subcommittee meeting that was held last week. Commissioner Lewin, if you'd like to go ahead.
Am I recognized by the chair? Yes? Okay. Good evening, everyone. I have two items to discuss. One, I've been asked to just give a brief report on the Housing Subcommittee that was formed at the last meeting. And for your recollection, that is Vice Chair Maruzzi and Commissioner Irvin and myself. And so with the help of Flynn, we met briefly and we fundamentally decided that the object of this subcommittee will be to find opportunities to zone for more housing within the built environment of the city, rather than look for opportunities on undeveloped land at the perimeter of the city. And so one goal will be to increase the supply of housing opportunities by right of zone. And another goal will be to identify a mix of housing types that would meet many different types of needs. And so this is why a lot of the discussion you may have heard previously, it's important to know the RHNA process, the housing element, will not recognize any of these new dwelling unit opportunities because they're within the built environment of the city of Palm Springs. But that being said, once the dwelling units are actually built, they will be counted for our compliance with the RHNA needs. And so the idea is, if we're successful, we'll create a parallel process that complements the city's overall goal of having housing that is sustainable, affordable, and accessible to the community. And in the meantime, that's as far as we got, and we'll go forward. Flynn, you did such a good job of helping me out when I couldn't explain what I was trying to do. And so now I want to ask, did I do a good enough job of explaining what we've done so far in this parallel process concept, that they're complementary but different? Yes? Okay. So that's all we've got for you right now, and we'll have more because we're going to meet again, and we'll report back when we have something more meaty. But I was asked to tell you how far we got. And since I've got the floor, Flynn, I have this question that has been in the back of my mind on virtually every time we do a CUP or we do any kind of change of use. And I wonder if we do this or not. When we look at like the phone building on Sunrise that we just rezoned and did a lot split, when we have cell towers that go up, or even the J.W. Robinson project we just voted on, I noticed that we look at the architecture, the landscaping, the parking lot, and I just want to know, does the city also look at these sidewalks, the public right-of-way sidewalks that are actually supposed to be maintained by the property owners? And is there a formal review of the quality of sidewalk, curb, and gutter when we have these CUPs or change of use processes?
Not specifically on a conditional use permit. However, when we have some type of a site plan review as part of our architectural review process, then yes, we would. With each application type, we're limited to what we review. So for example, a conditional use permit for a nightclub, we are looking at the nightclub use primarily. The fact that this nightclub was in a Class 1 historic building and they were proposing some changes to the exterior took us outside of that kind of narrow confine of the conditional use permit. But generally, under some type of a site plan or architectural review, we would look at those things in terms of the condition of the adjacent rights of way.
So, and I'm asking this just to really understand, in the condition of our sidewalks in the city, how often does it really, I mean, we don't have many opportunities to say, hey, property owner, you're going to need to fix this sidewalk. And I know many years ago, there was a movement to kind of push sidewalk responsibilities onto the city of Palm Springs, and the city said, property owners are still required to maintain their sidewalks. You look at a city like Los Angeles, which took that away from property owners, and you find that the sidewalks have been torn apart by tree roots, and there's nobody maintaining it. And that's why I'm just wondering, where in the development services process do we routinely say, we better check the sidewalk? Because our city's getting older and we're seeing a lot of this kind of adaptive reuse. And I just want to make sure that you've got a plan, or we eventually get a plan for that.
So the responsibility lies in two areas. Number one, as I had indicated, is part of our site plan review process. We do look at the off-site improvements. So that includes streets, curb cuts, et cetera. Part two of that is it can be included as part of the city's capital improvement project process, which is handled by the engineering division. So there's two different areas where we look at that. One is part of capital projects, and then number two is part of the site plan process and the responsibility of the property owner.
Okay. I'll probably come back to you with a question in 2 weeks, but that's great. Thank you very much, Flynn. And thank you, commissioners, for letting me speak.
Other comments from the commission? Commissioner Song? Commissioner Song?
Yes, I want to say how much I appreciate Commissioner Moritzi for asking the question on the status of project development here in Palm Springs. And I also appreciate David and Flynn for giving us a report, the memorandum. And so it was asked and it was responded. It took some time, but now we all have the same information. The question is on the Orchid and Dream Hotel, the reason why there's not more information is because they currently have a permit still in place. Is that correct?
On the Dream Hotel, yes, they do have a permit still in place. On the Orchid Tree Inn, they do not have any active building permit. They have an approved entitlement. City Council imposed a time frame for them to submit building permit applications. They did not meet that time frame, and so consequently, that is the reason why City Council is pursuing that action. So Orchid Tree does not have any active permits at this point in time.
Other commissioners? I just, two things. One is I did ask Veronica to come because I was concerned as we continue to approve cannabis projects that we should also be looking at the status of enforcement. And what I would like to do is pass along to City Council our concern that there currently isn't any evening enforcement between the hours of 5:30 and I think it's 7 a.m. Am I correct, Flynn? And our concern that as we approve projects in the city, we should be concerned that there's enforcement for the neighborhoods, especially if we're approving projects near residential districts.
Madam Chair, what I might ask you to do is on behalf of the Planning Commission, if perhaps you could draft a letter that we would then forward to the City Council liaisons who are over cannabis issues. I think that would be helpful to present the position of the Planning Commission relative to enforcement of conditions of approval that you all impose. So I think that would be helpful. And I'll work with you on that.
Thank you so much. Is there general agreement on that within the commission that that is an important issue to us, even though we don't have purview over it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Then I will do that.
I would also like to add too, that we might need to have some sort of consequence if we're having one applicant with multiple situations and nothing happening. What's the purpose of even having a code enforcement? They can continually break the code enforcement agreement and keep getting chances over and over again. So maybe we might need to look into that as well.
I will include that.
Madam Chair, can I say that I really appreciate you helping me understand how that conversation evolved to this point, and I really appreciate that we're going to give that direction about enforcement. That was the source of my confusion earlier, so thank you.
We spent a good deal of time on odor in the past, and this applicant didn't have as much of an odor issue, but we had a neighborhood very concerned about what the impacts on them would be.
Yeah, and I think hearing that testimony and having this kind of action that Flynn suggested is really a terrific way to go, because the council needs to hear that and the subcommittee would need to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Planning Director's report.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, just a couple of things related to the general plan update. On the upcoming City Council agenda, we have an amendment for the contract. This will be our second amendment to the contract with PlaceWorks, which is the consultant helping us with the update. Just wanted to let you know that, obviously with things that have happened, we have to extend our contract, which was anticipated to end next month in May, because we had hoped we would be done by then, but there was a few kinks that came into play here with COVID. So just wanted to give you an update on that. It's also some minor changes relative to the housing element and the analysis that has to go into that relative to state law and some additional technical technical requirements in how we analyze fair housing. So every city is going to have to comply with this Assembly Bill 686 that we have to provide some additional analysis that was not previously anticipated. So that also is going to require an augment to our budget on that. We're also going to be doing some additional outreach, targeted outreach here next month. At least that's the plan. So we're trying to reach, go out and do a roadshow like we had anticipated early on in this process and get community input and feedback. And so that's something that we hope to have underway here in less than a month. And it's not a community-wide workshop like we did, back in February of last year. But it would be more of a targeted, smaller kind of conversation, if you will, with the community or different areas of the community. So I just want to give the commission an update on those items relative to the general plan update. And that's all I have. I don't know, Flynn, if there's anything else that you wanted to add.
No, I don't have anything else this evening.
Thank you. With that, I will adjourn this meeting to 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, May 12th. Good evening, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Great night.
Thank you.